At the hospital, my payment was declined. Then I saw my daughter-in-law on a luxury trip with her lover. I was sitting upright in a narrow hospital bed at St. Catherine's Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona, with a pale blue blanket pulled over my knees and a plastic bracelet around my wrist that made me feel less like a person and more like a file number. My name was printed on it in black letters, Margaret Ellis, age 68. The nurse at the foot of my bed looked younger than my favorite winter coat. She had kind eyes, the kind that made bad news feel even worse, because you knew she hated being the one to deliver it. "Mrs. Ellis," she said softly, holding a clipboard against her chest. "I'm sorry, but the payment on file didn't go through." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. The room was full of little sounds, the soft beep of the heart monitor, the faint rush of air from the vent above the window, the squeak of rubber soles passing in the hallway. Somewhere down the corridor, a man coughed twice, then went silent. I looked at the nurse and blinked. "What do you mean it didn't go through?" She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "The card was declined. Billing tried twice this morning." I stared at her clipboard, as if the answer might be hiding between the papers. "That can't be right," I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm, maybe. But I had learned a long time ago that panic rarely made people listen more carefully. Panic made them pity you. Calm made them explain themselves. "There should be enough money in that account," I continued. "My pension deposit came in last week." The nurse nodded with that careful expression people use when they are not allowed to say too much. "You may want to call your bank, Mrs. Ellis. Sometimes it's just a security hold." A security hold. I almost smiled at that. It sounded so harmless, so technical, as if a computer somewhere had simply gotten confused. But my stomach tightened beneath the hospital gown, because the card they had on file was not in my purse. It was with my daughter-in-law. Claire had taken it 3 days before my procedure, standing in my kitchen with her perfect blonde hair tucked behind one ear and concern arranged across her face like makeup. "Mom, you shouldn't be worrying about hospital bills right now," she had said, placing one manicured hand over mine. "You focus on getting better. I'll handle the paperwork." She had called me Mom so naturally, not Margaret, not Mrs. Ellis, Mom. After my husband Thomas died, that word had become easier to accept than I expected. Daniel was my only son, and Claire was his wife. I wanted us to be close. I wanted to believe that family could stretch itself around loss and still hold. So I gave her the card. I gave her the folder with my insurance papers. I even signed the form she brought me the night before surgery, the one she said was just a temporary authorization so she could speak with billing if I was resting. "It's only for the hospital, Mom," she had whispered. "Daniel's drowning at work. Let me help." I remembered the way she had smiled when I signed. Not wide, not obvious, just a small, satisfied curve at the corner of her mouth. At the time, I thought it was relief. Now, sitting in that bed, with tape pulling at the skin near my IV, I wasn't so sure. "I'll call the bank," I told the nurse. She gave me a sympathetic nod. "Take your time. I'll come back later." When she left, the room felt larger. Empty. I reached for my phone on the rolling tray beside my bed. My fingers were still stiff from the medication, and it took me 2 tries to unlock the screen. I opened my banking app first, but before it loaded, a notification slid down from the top of the screen. A photo tag. Claire Ellis had posted 15 new photos. I don't know why I tapped it. Maybe habit, maybe confusion. Maybe some quiet part of me already knew the truth and wanted to stop pretending. The first picture filled my screen. Claire was standing beside a bright blue swimming pool with palm trees behind her, and the ocean shining in the distance. She wore a white linen dress, oversized sunglasses, and the kind of smile she never gave when she visited me. Not polite, not dutiful. Free. In one hand, she held a glass of champagne. In the other, a shopping bag from a designer store I had only ever walked past at the mall. A man stood beside her. He was not my son. His hand rested low on her back. Familiar and comfortable. Too comfortable. He wore a navy shirt open at the collar and a gold watch that caught the sunlight. The caption read, "Finally living the life I deserve." I sat very still. The heart monitor kept beeping beside me, steady and indifferent. I swiped to the next photo. Claire at a restaurant table with candles and oysters. Claire in front of a luxury hotel lobby. Claire holding up a leather handbag with a little laugh frozen on her face. Claire leaning against the same man on a balcony overlooking the water. Miami Beach. The location tag sat beneath her name like a slap. I looked down at my own hands. Thin skin, bruised knuckles from the IV attempt that had missed the first time, a hospital blanket tucked around my legs, a bill that had just been declined. Then I looked back at the screen. Claire was wearing a bracelet I had never seen before. Gold, delicate, expensive looking. Something in me went quiet. Not numb, not broken, quiet. There is a kind of silence that comes before crying, and there is another kind that comes after you realize crying would be a waste of strength. I did not cry. I took a screenshot. Then another. Then another. I saved the caption. I saved the location. I zoomed in on the shopping bags, the hotel logo behind her shoulder, the man's face reflected faintly in the restaurant window. My hands were trembling now, but not from weakness, from recognition, because suddenly, little things began arranging themselves in my mind. Claire asking what day my pension came in. Claire offering to simplify my bills. Claire telling Daniel not to bother coming to every appointment because she had it handled. Claire laughing in my kitchen 2 weeks earlier when I said I still liked paper statements. "Oh, Mom," she had said, "you're adorable, but nobody does things that way anymore." Adorable. That was the word people used when they wanted to make control sound like care. I opened the banking app again. This time it loaded. The balance at the top of the screen made my mouth go dry. It was not empty, but it was close enough. There were charges I did not recognize. Large ones. A hotel, an airline, a boutique, a restaurant with a name that sounded French and expensive, a spa charge for 2 people. 2 people. I stared at those words until they blurred. That money was not just money. It was my recovery. It was the medication I would need after discharge, the follow-up visits, the physical therapy, the temporary homemade Daniel had insisted I should hire because he worried about me falling in the bathroom. It was my pension, my late husband's careful planning, years of clipped coupons, delayed vacations, and saying no to little luxuries so I would never become a burden to anyone. And Claire had turned it into champagne. A soft knock came at the door. I quickly locked my phone and looked up. Nurse Emily stepped in again, her smile gentle. "Are you all right, Mrs. Ellis?" It was such a simple question. I thought about saying yes. Women my age are very good at saying yes, when the truth is too heavy for a hospital room. Yes, I'm fine. Yes, don't worry. Yes, I can manage. But the word sat in my throat and refused to move. So I looked at her and said, "I need to make a phone call." "Of course." She glanced at the monitor. "Would you like me to close the door?" "Yes, please." She closed it softly behind her. I sat there for a moment, listening to the latch click. Then I opened my contacts and found the bank's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could hear Thomas in my memory, his voice low and practical the way it had been when he taught me how to balance our checkbook after we bought our first house. "Maggie," he used to say, "trust people with your heart if you want to, but never hand them the keys to your life without checking the lock." I had checked nothing. Because Claire was family. Because Daniel trusted her. Because I was tired. Because I wanted to believe that a woman who brought me chicken soup and called me Mom would not steal from me while I was lying under hospital lights with stitches beneath my ribs. The phone rang once. Twice. A recorded voice thanked me for calling. I pressed the number for fraud support with a finger that no longer trembled. While I waited, I looked again at Claire's photo. Her champagne glass was lifted toward the camera. Her smile was bright, careless, triumphant. She thought I was too weak to notice, too medicated to question, too old to understand screenshots, bank apps, location tags, and digital receipts. Maybe yesterday she would have been right. But that morning, in a hospital bed in Phoenix, with my payment declined and my dignity hanging by a thread, something inside me woke up, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. When the bank representative finally answered, I sat a little straighter against my pillows. "My name is Margaret Ellis," I said. "I need to report unauthorized charges on my account." Then I looked at Claire's smiling face one last time and whispered to myself the truth I had not been ready to say aloud. My hospital bill had not been declined because I was broke. It had been declined because my daughter-in-law had decided my life savings belonged to her. Before that morning in the hospital, Claire had been perfect. That was the hardest part to admit. Not careless, not openly cruel, Not the kind of daughter-in-law neighbors would whisper about after church. Claire knew better than that. She understood appearances the way some people understand math. Every smile had a purpose. Every favor came wrapped in just enough warmth to make you feel guilty for questioning it. 2 weeks before my procedure, she showed up at my house with a canvas grocery bag on one arm and a soft pink cardigan buttoned neatly over her blouse. "I brought you low-sodium soup," she said, stepping into my kitchen as if she had always belonged there. "And those crackers you like. Daniel said you haven't been eating enough." I remember looking at her and feeling ashamed of how touched I was. After Thomas died, the house had become too quiet in the mornings. The coffee pot still made 4 cups because I never had the heart to change the setting. His chair at the breakfast table stayed empty, pushed in exactly the way he used to leave it. Some days I caught myself turning toward the hallway, ready to tell him something small, only to remember there was no one there to answer. So when Claire came in carrying soup and concern, I let myself believe it was kindness. She moved around my kitchen easily, opening cabinets, taking down bowls, finding spoons. She wore perfume that smelled like clean flowers and expensive department stores. "You sit," she told me. "You're doing too much." I sat. That was the beginning of it, I think. Not the theft, not the paperwork. The beginning was me sitting down while someone else moved through my life. Claire placed the soup in front of me and watched until I took the first spoonful. "Good?" she asked. "It's very good." Her smile brightened. "See? Let me take care of a few things. That's what family is for." Family? That word can open doors no key should ever touch. Over the next few days, Claire became part of every appointment. She drove me to the cardiologist because Daniel had a concrete delivery delayed at a job site in Scottsdale. She sat beside me in waiting rooms, tapping on her phone with one hand while patting mine with the other whenever a nurse walked by. To everyone else, she looked devoted. "Your daughter is so sweet," one receptionist said. "Daughter-in-law," I corrected gently. Claire laughed and squeezed my shoulder. "Close enough." At the time, it warmed me. Now, remembering it from that hospital bed, it made something inside me turn cold. She listened carefully when the doctor explained my procedure. She asked questions about recovery time, medication costs, insurance coverage. She wrote things down in a little cream-colored notebook with gold corners. I thought she was being responsible. I did not notice that most of her questions were not about my pain. They were about access. How long will she be unable to handle phone calls? Who should billing contact if she's resting? Will she need someone to manage follow-up paperwork? Can family members speak to insurance on her behalf? The doctor answered politely. I sat there in my paper gown, grateful that someone younger and sharper was keeping track of details I felt too tired to hold. Tiredness is dangerous when the wrong person knows how to use it. One afternoon, after my pre-op blood work, Claire drove me home through the dry Phoenix heat. The sun flashed against windshields on Camelback Road, and I remember closing my eyes at a red light because the brightness made my head ache. "You know," she said casually, "it would help if I knew which account the hospital bills come out of." I opened my eyes. "My checking account," I said. "The one my pension goes into." "Monthly?" "Yes." "What day?" I turned slightly toward her. She kept her eyes on the road, face relaxed, voice smooth. "Just so I can make sure nothing bounces while you're recovering." "The 3rd, I said after a pause. "Usually the 3rd. She nodded, as if that answer had been expected. "And you still use the same bank Thomas used?" "Yes." "That's good. Stable. Stable." I remember that word now because it sounded almost like an appraisal. When we got back to my house, she carried my purse inside even though I told her I could manage it. She set it on the kitchen counter, then began sorting through the folder of hospital papers. "This is a mess," she said, smiling. "No wonder older people get overwhelmed." "Older people, not you." "Not Mom. Older people." The phrase passed through the room quickly, but it left a mark. She pulled out a form and tapped the signature line with one polished nail. "This one allows me to speak with billing if they call while you're asleep after surgery." I thought Daniel could do that. "Daniel will, of course," she said quickly, "but you know how busy he is. And honestly, Mom, he gets emotional with medical things. I'm better with details." That was true enough to sound harmless. Daniel had always hated hospitals. When he was 8, he fainted during Thomas's stitches after a garage accident. Even as a grown man, he went pale around needles and blood pressure cuffs. Claire knew that. She used truth the way a thief uses gloves. I signed the form. She slid another page beneath it. And this one is just temporary authorization, in case they need payment confirmation. I glanced at the paragraphs, but the words blurred together. My chest had been aching all afternoon. The doctor had told me not to stress. Claire stood beside me, patient and smiling, holding a pen. So I signed that one too. She gathered the papers immediately. Too quickly. I noticed it, even then. A tiny tug in my mind, a whisper. But Claire leaned down and kissed my cheek. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Thomas would want you taken care of." At the mention of my husband's name, the whisper went silent. That was the cruelest part. She knew which memories softened me. The night before my surgery, Daniel came by after work. He looked exhausted, dust still on the edge of his boots, his shirt wrinkled from a long day. He hugged me carefully, as if I might crack. "Claire's been amazing, hasn't she?" he said. I looked across the room at her. She was standing by my bookshelf, straightening a framed photo of Thomas and me from our 30th anniversary. "Yes," I said. "She has." Daniel smiled with relief. "I don't know what I'd do without her." Claire turned then, soft-eyed and modest. "Oh, stop," she said. "Your mom deserves to be cared for." I believed her, because I wanted to. Because loneliness makes small kindnesses look larger than they are. Because when you are 68 and facing a hospital stay alone, you do not want to suspect the woman holding your insurance card. That night, after they left, I packed my overnight bag. A robe, slippers, my reading glasses, Thomas's old handkerchief, folded into the side pocket because I still carried it when I was scared. I looked at my purse on the dresser and noticed my bank card was missing. Then I remembered. Claire had it. For billing, for emergencies, for family. I turned off the bedroom light and told myself I was lucky. Lucky to have a son. Lucky to have a daughter-in-law willing to help. Lucky not to face everything alone. The next morning, Claire drove me to the hospital. Daniel met us there for an hour, before rushing back to a job site emergency. He kissed my forehead and promised he would come after work. Claire stayed. She held my coat while I changed. She spoke with the nurse. She answered questions before I could. When they wheeled me toward the procedure room, she bent close and smiled down at me. "Don't worry about a thing, Mom," she whispered. "I've got everything handled." I remember the ceiling lights passing above me one by one. White square, white square, white square. I remember thinking her voice was the last family voice I heard before the anesthesia took me under. And now, 2 days later, I sat in that hospital bed staring at Miami photos on my phone and bank charges I had never made. She had gotten everything handled, just not for me. After the bank representative placed me on hold, I kept staring at Claire's photos. I should have looked away. A woman recovering from heart surgery should not lie in a hospital bed studying the face of her daughter-in-law at a luxury resort, trying to measure betrayal by the angle of a stranger's hand. But I could not stop. The first photo had been bad enough. Claire by the pool in Miami Beach, champagne in hand, sunlight on her hair, smiling like the world had finally given her permission to forget the rest of us existed. The second photo was worse. She was sitting at a restaurant table under soft golden lights. There were oysters on crushed ice, a bottle of sparkling wine in a silver bucket, and 2 plates arranged close together. Not across from each other like polite friends. Close, intimate. A man's hand rested near hers on the white tablecloth. I zoomed in. His wedding ring finger was bare. Claire's left hand was turned just enough for her own ring to flash in the candlelight. That small detail made my chest tighten harder than the incision beneath my gown. Not because I loved Claire. I had tried to love her, yes. But what hurt in that moment was Daniel, my son. The little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the front yard and call them sunshine flowers. The teenager who once waited up until midnight because Thomas had the flu and he wanted to make sure I ate dinner. The man who now believed his wife was away resting from the burden of caring for me. Resting. That was the word Claire had chosen. I swiped to the next photo. Claire stood inside what looked like a designer boutique, holding a tan leather handbag against her hip. The mirror behind her reflected part of the store. Marble floor, soft lighting, glass shelves. I could see the salesman's white gloves. I could see another shopping bag near her feet. Her caption under that picture said, "A little reward for surviving a stressful week." I read it twice. A stressful week. My week had been hospital gowns, blood pressure cuffs, pills in paper cups, and nurses asking me to rate my pain from 1 to 10. Her week had been champagne, shopping, and a man who was not my son. I took another screenshot. Then I enlarged the photo until the brand name on the bag became clear. I did not know much about designer purses, but I knew enough to understand that a bag like that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment used to be before Thomas and I finally paid off the house. Thomas would have stared at the receipt, adjusted his glasses, and said something dry like, "Does it carry the groceries in by itself?" The thought came so suddenly that I almost laughed. Then my eyes filled, but only for a second. I blinked it away. Claire did not deserve my tears. The next photo showed the hotel balcony. Blue water in the distance, white curtains moving behind her. The same man stood close enough that his shoulder touched hers. His face was turned toward her, not the camera. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone he thinks belongs to him. Under the post, one of Claire's friends had commented, "You two look amazing. Finally free. Finally free. Free from what? From Daniel? From bills? From pretending to be the perfect daughter-in-law while she emptied the account of a woman lying in a hospital bed?" I tapped the comment and saved that too. The bank representative returned to the line. "Mrs. Ellis, thank you for holding. I'm seeing several recent transactions that may be relevant. Before I read them, can you confirm your mailing address and the last 4 digits of your social security number?" I answered carefully. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. Maybe there is a point where shock becomes structure, where the mind stops collapsing and begins making lists. The representative began reading. A first-class flight from Phoenix to Miami, a hotel authorization at a beachfront resort, a charge from a luxury boutique, a restaurant bill for $680, a spa charge for 2 guests, a cash withdrawal. Each amount landed quietly. No shouting, no broken glass, just numbers moving through a phone line while I watched the woman who had taken them smile on my screen. "Do you recognize these charges?" the representative asked. "No," I said. "Did you authorize anyone to use your card?" I looked at the hospital door, closed. The hallway beyond it hummed with normal life. Nurses walking, visitors speaking softly, coffee machines clicking. Somewhere nearby, a family laughed. I thought about how many times Claire had stood in that hallway with her hand on my shoulder, letting people admire her devotion. "My daughter-in-law had my card for hospital billing," I said. "Not for travel, not for shopping, not for anything else." There was a pause on the line, a professional pause, the kind trained people use when they hear something ugly but cannot react like friends. "I understand," the representative said. "We can freeze the card immediately and begin a dispute process." "Yes," I said. "Freeze it." The word felt good. Small, but solid. Freeze it. Stop it. Put a lock on the door I should never have opened. While she processed the request, I returned to Claire's profile. I do not know why I needed to see one more. Maybe I wanted the final piece. Maybe I wanted to be certain there was no innocent explanation left hiding in the corners. The last photo had been posted 20 minutes earlier. Claire stood in front of a full-length mirror, wearing a pale blue dress I had never seen before. The tag from the boutique still hung from the sleeve, half tucked under her arm. She was laughing at the man behind her, who was holding the phone. His face was clearer this time. Dark hair, trim beard, confident smile. I did not know his name yet, but I would. On the nightstand behind them sat a small black wallet. Beside it, a white envelope with the hotel logo printed in gold. And beside that, almost hidden beneath Claire's sunglasses, was my bank card. My card. The blue corner was visible. The same tiny scratch near the chip from when I had dropped it in the grocery store parking lot last winter. For a moment the room narrowed. The monitor, the IV pole, the white walls, the phone in my hand. Everything seemed to pull toward that little blue corner in the photo. It was not just proof that she had gone. It was proof that she had taken me with her. Not my body, not my voice, my name, my pension, my safety. The money Thomas and I had built one careful year at a time. The bank representative came back on the line. "Mrs. Ellis, your card has been frozen. No further charges will go through." "Thank you," I said. "Would you like us to send the transaction list to your email?" "Yes, send everything." When the call ended, I sat very still with the phone resting against my blanket. The hospital room looked the same as it had before. Same flowers Daniel had brought. Same cup of melting ice chips. Same get-well card from my neighbor taped to the wall. But I was not the same woman who had woken up that morning, worried about pain medication and discharge instructions. That woman still believed this might be a misunderstanding. I did not. I opened a new folder on my phone and named it Claire. Then I moved every screenshot into it. The pool, the restaurant, the boutique, the balcony, the comment, the mirror, the bank card. One by one, I saved them all. Not because I wanted revenge. That word sounded too loud for the silence I was in. I saved them because people like Claire survive by making older women doubt what they have seen. They smile, they cry, they say we are confused, they say medication made us foggy, they say we misunderstood. I wanted no room for misunderstanding. When I finished, I placed the phone face down on the blanket and looked toward the window. Phoenix sunlight pressed against the blinds, bright and dry. I whispered Thomas's name once. Then I pressed the call button for the nurse. When Emily stepped in, I looked at her calmly. "Is there a social worker available today?" I asked. Her expression changed, just slightly. "Yes, Mrs. Ellis. I can page one." "Please do," I said. And for the first time since Claire's smile appeared on my screen, I felt something stronger than humiliation. I felt awake. When Nurse Emily left to page the social worker, I picked up my phone again. The screen had gone dark. For a moment, I could see my own reflection in it. Gray hair flattened from the hospital pillow, skin pale under the harsh overhead light, a thin line of tape across the back of my hand where the IV tugged every time I moved. I looked fragile. That was the dangerous part. People see an older woman in a hospital bed and decide she is already halfway gone. They lower their voices. They explain slowly. They assume pain has made her confused and age has made her easy. Claire had made that mistake. I opened my email and waited for the bank statement to arrive. The message came through at 11:42 a.m. I remember the exact time because the clock on the wall clicked to the next minute just as I opened it. The statement was attached as a PDF. My fingers were clumsy, but I managed to enlarge it. Line by line, the truth arranged itself in black letters. Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. First class upgrade. Miami Beach Grand Palms Resort. Deposit. Luna Mare Boutique. $3,286.14. Azure Dining Room. $681.92. Serenity Spa Miami. Couples Package. Couples. That word sat there quietly, pretending to be ordinary. I read it 3 times. Claire had not just stolen comfort. She had purchased romance with my recovery money. A soft sound came out of me. Not a sob, not a laugh. Something smaller. Something tired. I kept scrolling. There were more charges than the representative had read over the phone. Ride services. Room service. A jewelry store. Another restaurant. A charge from the hotel bar after midnight. After midnight. I imagined Claire laughing under warm lights while I lay in this bed trying to breathe without pulling at the stitches beneath my ribs. Then I saw the cash withdrawal. ATM withdrawal. $2,000. My hand tightened around the phone. $2,000. Thomas and I had once gone 3 years without replacing the living room carpet because we wanted Daniel to graduate college without student loans. We had driven the same used Buick until the air conditioner gave out completely in July. We had packed sandwiches on road trips and called it adventure. $2,000 had never been casual money in our house. It had been planning money, safety money, emergency money. The kind you did not touch unless the roof leaked or the doctor said a test was necessary. Claire had pulled it from an ATM like it was pocket change. I forwarded the statement to myself again, then saved a copy to my phone. I did not know much about legal matters, but I knew one thing clearly. People can explain away a feeling. They cannot explain away a timestamp. At 12:06 p.m., the bank called me back. "This is Alicia from Valley Trust Bank's fraud department. Am I speaking with Margaret Ellis?" "Yes," I said. "Mrs. Ellis, we've frozen the card ending in 4482. I need to ask a few follow-up questions about the authorized user access on the account." Authorized user access. The words made my skin prickle. "There should not be an authorized user," I said. "It is my account. I understand. I'm looking at a temporary authorization document submitted electronically 2 days ago. It lists Claire Ellis as an approved financial contact for medical billing and related expenses." I closed my eyes. 2 days ago. The morning of my surgery, Claire had been sitting beside my bed in pre-op, holding my purse on her lap. I remembered the nurse asking me questions. Allergies, emergency contact, last meal, current medications. Claire had pulled out papers then. "Just one more signature, Mom," she had said. "They need everything updated before they take you back." The nurse had been adjusting the blood pressure cuff. Daniel had already left for his job site after kissing my forehead. I had been cold under the thin blanket. My chest had ached from fear more than illness. I signed where Claire pointed. One more signature. I opened my eyes and stared at the white ceiling. "What does related expenses mean?" I asked. Alicia hesitated. "It can be interpreted broadly, depending on the institution, but it does not authorize personal travel, retail purchases, or non-medical entertainment." Entertainment. That word almost made me sick. "Can you send me that document?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am. We can send a copy to the email on file. Send it now, please." There was a pause. Keyboard clicking. Done. I thanked her, but before she could end the call, I asked one more question. "Was my PIN used?" "Yes, Mrs. Ellis." The card transactions appear to have been completed with the correct PIN in several cases. I looked toward the window. The blinds were half closed, slicing the sunlight into thin white bars across the floor. Claire had asked for my PIN the night before surgery. Not directly. She was too clever for direct theft. She had stood in my kitchen, holding my pharmacy card and insurance card, frowning at the folder. "Mom, the hospital portal sometimes asks for verification codes," she said. "Do you use the same number for medical payments as your debit card? Just so I don't lock you out by mistake." I had been embarrassed. Technology made me feel foolish sometimes. Too many passwords, too many portals, too many little boxes asking me to prove I was myself. So I told her. I whispered my PIN to my daughter-in-law across the kitchen table, while Thomas's photograph watched from the wall behind her. "I see," I said to Alicia. My voice sounded distant but steady. "Mrs. Ellis, do you feel safe?" she asked. The question was so unexpected that I did not answer right away. Safe. I was in a hospital, surrounded by nurses, monitors, locked medication carts, and people trained to keep bodies alive. But safety is not only about whether someone can reach your bed. Sometimes danger has your bank card. Sometimes danger smiles in family photos. Sometimes danger knows your son's schedule and your late husband's name and exactly how tired you are. "I'm in the hospital," I said finally. "I'm safe for now." "For now?" she repeated gently. I swallowed. "For now." Alicia lowered her voice. "I strongly recommend you speak with the hospital social worker and consider revoking the authorization immediately. We can begin the dispute, but you may also want legal guidance." "I've asked for the social worker," I said, "and I know a lawyer." That was not entirely true until I said it. Then I remembered Howard Klein. Howard had handled Thomas's estate after the funeral. A quiet man with silver glasses and careful hands. He had sat with me at my dining table while I signed papers I barely understood through grief. Before he left that day, he had handed me his card. "If anything feels wrong later," he said, "call me before you sign." Before you sign, I pressed my lips together. Too late for that. But not too late for everything. After the call ended, I opened the new email from the bank. The authorization document filled the screen. At first glance, it looked harmless. Medical billing, temporary contact, insurance coordination. Then I enlarged the lower section. There, beneath language I did not remember reading, were permissions that made my blood turn cold. Access to account balances. Permission to confirm funds. Permission to initiate payment on behalf of patient. Permission to discuss financial matters related to care and recovery. The phrase care and recovery had been stretched wide enough for Claire to walk through carrying a designer bag. My signature sat at the bottom, shaky, tired. Mine. I touched the screen with one finger. There is a special kind of shame that comes from seeing your own name used against you. For a few seconds, I let myself feel it. Then I put it away. Shame belonged to the person who lied, not the person who trusted. I opened my contacts and searched for Howard Klein. His number was still there. I had not called him in nearly 4 years. My thumb hovered over the name. I thought of Daniel, of his face when he would find out, of the way his whole marriage would crack down the middle, of the grandchildren I did not have yet but had once hoped for, of every holiday that might become colder after this. Then I looked again at the bank statement. Spa for 2. First-class upgrade. Designer boutique. My card on a hotel nightstand. I pressed call. Howard answered on the fourth ring. Klein Law Office. Mr. Klein, I said. This is Margaret Ellis. Thomas Ellis's wife. His voice softened immediately. Margaret. Of course. How are you? I looked around the hospital room. At the IV. At the statement. At Claire's frozen smile on my phone. I need help, I said. And I need it today. There was no hesitation. Tell me what happened. So I did. Not with tears. Not with trembling. I told him the way Thomas would have wanted me to tell it. Clearly. Slowly. With dates, amounts, names, and proof. Howard listened without interrupting. That was one of the reasons Thomas had trusted him. Some people listen only long enough to prepare their own answer. Howard listened like every word had weight. When I finished, there was a quiet pause on the line. Margaret, he said carefully, do not confront her yet. I looked down at the bank statement on my blanket. I wasn't planning to. Good. Save everything. Screenshots, emails, transaction lists. Do not delete messages. Do not warn her that the card has been frozen until we understand exactly what she signed you into. What should I do about Daniel? That was the question I had been avoiding. Not Claire, not the money. Daniel. My son was the part of this that hurt in a deeper place. Howard exhaled softly. Does Daniel know any of this? No. Then tell him only what you can prove, not what you suspect, not what you feel, what you can prove. I almost smiled. That sounded like Thomas too. Facts first, feelings later. I'll come by the hospital this afternoon, Howard said. Text me the room number. Until then, if anyone calls you about money, paperwork, or Claire, do not agree to anything. I understand. And Margaret? Yes, you did the right thing calling. After we hung up, I sat with that sentence longer than I expected. You did the right thing. At 68, after raising a child, burying a husband, paying bills, surviving surgery, and keeping a house standing through dust storms and lonely winters, I still needed to hear that. I still needed someone to tell me I was not making trouble by protecting what was mine. A little after 1 o'clock, Daniel arrived. I heard his boots before I saw him. Heavy steps in the hallway, then a soft knock on my door. Mom? He stepped in holding a paper bag from the cafe downstairs and a small bouquet of yellow flowers. His work shirt was rolled at the sleeves, and there was a smear of dust near his collar. He looked tired. My boy had always looked older when he was worried. Hey, he said, forcing a smile. I brought you chicken soup. The nurse said you might be allowed something better than Jell-O. Normally, I would have teased him, told him hospital Jell-O had character, asked if he remembered the green kind he used to beg for when he was little. But I could not reach for normal. Not yet. Thank you, sweetheart, I said. He set the flowers on the windowsill, then leaned down and kissed my forehead. His lips were warm, familiar. For 1 second, I saw him at 6 years old, climbing into my lap with a scraped knee, trusting me to fix what hurt. Now I was the one hurting, and he did not even know where to look. You okay? He asked, sitting in the chair beside my bed. You look pale. I had a difficult morning. His expression changed immediately. Is it your heart? Did the doctor say something? No, the doctor hasn't been in yet. Then what happened? I looked at him. Daniel had Thomas's eyes. Brown, steady, gentle when he was not hiding from discomfort. But lately, I realized, he had become very good at letting Claire stand between him and anything difficult. Where is Claire? I asked. He blinked, surprised by the question. Claire? Yes. She's at that wellness retreat I told you about, in Sedona, I think. Or maybe Scottsdale. One of those spa places. He rubbed the back of his neck. She said she needed a couple days to decompress after everything. After everything? You know. He glanced at the IV pole, then back at me. Taking you to appointments. Handling insurance. Staying here during surgery. She's been under a lot of stress. I let the words settle between us. Claire was under stress. Claire, who had just charged a couple spa package in Miami to my account. Claire, who was drinking champagne while Daniel defended her exhaustion. Did she tell you my hospital payment was declined this morning? I asked. Daniel's face went still. What? The card on file didn't go through. That doesn't make sense. He leaned forward. I thought Claire handled all that. She did. He frowned. Maybe it's just a bank issue. Fraud alert or something. Yes, I said. Fraud is one word for it. Daniel stared at me. I reached for my phone. My fingers felt steadier than they had all morning. "Mom," he said slowly, "what are you saying?" "I'm saying I called the bank." The chair creaked as he shifted. "And?" I opened the folder I had named Claire. For a moment, I hesitated. Not because I doubted the evidence. Because once I showed him, there would be no returning to the version of our family he still believed in. There would be a before and an after. A mother learns to protect her child from pain, but sometimes telling the truth is the only protection left. I tapped the first screenshot and handed him the phone. Daniel looked down. At first, his face only showed confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like embarrassment, as if he had accidentally seen something private and wanted to look away. "Is that Claire?" he asked. "Yes." "Where is this?" "Miami Beach." His eyes moved over the photo. The pool, the palm trees, the champagne, the man standing too close. "That could be old," he said. There it was, the first defense. Not because he believed it fully, because he needed it to be possible. "It was posted this morning," I said. He swallowed. Maybe she reposted something. I took the phone back, opened the next screenshot, and showed him the caption with the timestamp. Daniel read it silently. "Finally living the life I deserve." The color began to drain from his face. "Who is that guy?" "I don't know yet." Yet. I did not answer that. I opened the banking email instead. "Daniel, look at these charges." He took the phone again, but more slowly this time. His thumb moved down the statement. First-class flight, Miami Beach Resort, designer boutique, restaurant, spa for 2, cash withdrawal. I watched his eyes stop at each line. "That's Mom's account?" he asked, but his voice had already changed. "Yes." "No." He shook his head. "No. Claire wouldn't. She had my card. For billing." "Yes." "She had authorization?" "She told me it was temporary. For the hospital." Daniel stood up and turned away from me. He put one hand on the back of his neck. The other held my phone loosely at his side. For a second, I worried he might drop it. "Mom, I don't understand." "I know." She told me she was exhausted. She said she felt guilty leaving, but her friend paid for the trip. She lied. The word was small. It did not need to be bigger. Daniel turned back, and I saw the little boy again. Only this time I could not bandage the wound. "Why didn't you call me first?" he asked. There was no anger in his voice, only hurt. "Because I didn't know what was true yet. And because, Daniel, you have been letting Claire tell you what is true for a long time." He looked as if I had slapped him. I did not apologize. Some sentences are painful because they are cruel. Others are painful because they are accurate. He sat down again, slowly. "I thought she was helping you." So did I. The room went quiet. Outside the window, Phoenix sunlight glared against the glass. The flowers Daniel had brought sat bright and cheerful on the sill, completely unaware that everything beside them had changed. Daniel looked at the phone again. "Maybe there's an explanation," he said, "but weaker now. Then stay with me when Howard gets here." His eyes lifted. "Howard Klein?" "Yes." "You called Dad's lawyer?" "I did." That frightened him more than the photos, I think. Photos could still be explained by panic and denial. Lawyers meant something had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. "Mom," he said, "how bad is this?" I looked at my son. The answer was in the statement, in the screenshots, in the authorization form, in the way Claire had used my weakness and his trust at the same time. But I did not give him all of that at once. I only said, "Bad enough that I need you to stop defending her before you know the facts." His jaw tightened. Then, slowly, he nodded. It was not enough to fix anything, but it was the first honest thing that had happened all day. Daniel stayed in the chair beside my bed after that. He did not say much. He kept looking at my phone, then at the floor, then at the flowers he had brought. The yellow petals looked too bright for the room now, too cheerful beside the bank statement glowing on the screen. I knew that look on his face. It was the look of a man trying to hold two versions of his life at once. In one version, Claire was his devoted wife, the woman who organized his schedule, reminded him of birthdays, packed his lunch when he worked late, and took care of his mother when he was too busy. In the other version, Claire was in Miami with another man, spending money meant for my hospital bill. Both versions could not be true, but letting go of the first one hurt him. So I gave him silence. Sometimes silence is kinder than pushing. A soft knock came at the door. Nurse Emily stepped in. followed by a woman in a navy blazer and flat shoes. She had silver threaded through her dark hair and a badge clipped neatly to her pocket. "Mrs. Ellis," the woman said, "I'm Carol Bennett. I'm one of the hospital social workers. Emily said you asked to speak with someone." Her voice was calm, not sweet. I appreciated that. Sweetness would have made me feel weak. "Yes," I said. "Thank you for coming." Carol looked from me to Daniel, then back again. "Would you like to speak privately?" Daniel stood immediately. "I can step out." I looked at him. Only an hour earlier, I might have said yes. I might have protected him from embarrassment. I might have kept the ugliness behind a closed door and told myself I was being a good mother. But Claire had thrived in closed spaces. Side conversations, private explanations, little documents signed when no one else was watching. "No," I said. "He should hear this." Daniel sat back down slowly. Carol pulled the rolling chair closer to my bed. "Tell me what's going on." I handed her my phone. I did not start with feelings. I started with the facts, the way Howard had told me to. My daughter-in-law had my debit card for hospital billing. This morning, the payment was declined. I called the bank. There are charges I did not make. Carol listened without changing expression. That mattered. People often react too quickly to an older woman's distress. They widen their eyes, lower their voices, tilt their heads. Before you finish speaking, you can already see them deciding whether you are confused, dramatic, or lonely. Carol did not do that. She looked at each screenshot. Claire by the pool. Claire in the boutique. Claire with the man on the balcony. Claire's caption. Then she opened the statement and read the charges one by one. Her mouth tightened slightly at Serenity Spa Miami. "Couples package." "That is your daughter-in-law?" she asked. "Yes." "And this man?" "Not my son," I said. Daniel flinched beside me. Carol looked at him briefly, then returned to me. "Did you give her permission to use your card for anything beyond hospital expenses?" "No." "Did you understand the authorization form you signed?" I understood what she told me it was. That answer hung in the air. Carol nodded once, as if she had heard the same sentence many times from many people who had trusted the wrong person. "Mrs. Ellis," she said gently, "what you're describing may be financial exploitation." Daniel shifted in his chair. The phrase sounded official, heavy, harder to dismiss than theft, because theft sounded like something that happened in parking lots and dark alleys. Financial exploitation sounded like a clean signature, a familiar face, a hand on your shoulder while someone emptied your account. "I don't want to make my family look bad," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Carol's eyes softened then, but not with pity. Protecting yourself is not the same as attacking your family. I looked down at the blanket. My hands were folded there, one over the other. Thomas used to say my hands told on me. If I was angry, they went still. If I was afraid, I twisted my wedding band. Now my fingers rested motionless. Carol continued, "Needing help after surgery does not mean someone has the right to take control of your money, your paperwork, or your choices." I heard Daniel inhale slowly. Maybe the sentence was for him too. "What happens now?" he asked. Carol turned to him. "First, your mother needs to secure her accounts. Then, any authorization documents should be reviewed. If she wants, the hospital can update her contact preferences, so only people she names can discuss her care or billing." "I want that," I said. My answer came quickly. Too quickly, maybe. But after a morning of watching my life get spent from a beach in Miami, I needed one thing to be immediate. Carol took out a pen. "Who do you want listed?" I looked at Daniel. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear now. Not fully steady. Not yet. But clearer. "Daniel can remain as emergency contact," I said. "But no one else. Not Claire." He closed his eyes for a second. I knew that hurt him. I also knew he needed to feel it. Carol wrote it down. Then she asked, "Do you have legal counsel?" "Yes," I said. "Howard Klein is coming this afternoon." "Good. Until then, do not sign anything else. If your daughter-in-law calls, you are not obligated to discuss this with her." As if the phone had heard her, Daniel's screen lit up in his hand. He looked down. His face changed. "It's Claire," he said. No one moved. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Daniel stared at it like it had become something unfamiliar. "Don't answer," I said. He looked at me. For the first time that day, he did not argue. The phone went silent. A few seconds later, mine lit up. "Claire." Her name appeared across my screen with the photo Daniel had set for her contact years ago. Claire smiling at a Christmas table, holding a tray of cookies she had not baked. I watched it ring. Carol's eyes moved to me. "You can let it go to voicemail." So I did. The phone stopped. Then a message appeared. "Mom, why is your card not working? I'm trying to handle something for you. Call me ASAP." There it was. Not, "How are you feeling?" Not, "Is the hospital bill okay?" Not, "Did something happen? Why is your card not working?" Daniel read the message over my shoulder. His jaw tightened. Something inside him shifted. I saw it. A small door closing. A better one opening. Carol asked, "May I document that you received this message after the card was frozen?" "Yes," I said. I took another screenshot. The folder named Claire grew by one more piece. A little before 3 o'clock, Howard Klein arrived. He looked older than I remembered, but then, I supposed, so did I. His hair was thinner, his glasses darker, his suit the same careful gray he had worn after Thomas's funeral. He paused at the doorway when he saw me. "Margaret," he said quietly. There was no pity in his voice, only recognition, that nearly undid me. "Howard," I said. He came to my bedside and took my hand gently, mindful of the IV tape. "Thomas would be furious," he said. It was the first thing anyone had said all day that made me feel less alone. I nodded once. "If he were here," I said, "this would already be handled." Howard pulled the chair closer. "Then we'll handle it for him." Daniel stood and offered his seat, but Howard waved him down. "You should stay, Daniel. This concerns you too." Daniel sat. Carol remained near the foot of the bed with my permission. She said she could help make sure the hospital records were updated correctly. Howard opened a leather folder and took out a notepad. "Start at the beginning," he said. So I did, again. This time, with Daniel listening to every word. I told Howard about the soup in my kitchen, the appointments, the questions about my pension, the PIN, the authorization form, the declined payment, the photos, the bank card visible on the hotel nightstand. Howard wrote without interrupting. When I finished, I handed him the copy of the authorization document from my email. He enlarged it on his tablet. For several minutes, the only sound was the heart monitor and Howard's finger moving slowly down the screen. His expression did not change. That worried me more than if it had. Finally, he looked up. "This was not written to help you pay a hospital bill, Margaret." Daniel leaned forward. "What does that mean?" Howard turned the tablet toward him. "It means the language is broader than necessary. Too broad. Whoever prepared this wanted access, not convenience." Daniel stared at the document. "My wife gave her this?" Howard looked at him over the top of his glasses. "That is what we need to establish. But based on what your mother has shown me, someone used a medical situation to gain financial access." The room went quiet. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. I almost reached for him. Almost. Then I stopped. A mother's instinct is to comfort her child, even when he failed to protect her. But that day, I needed to let him sit with the truth long enough to understand its shape. Howard turned back to me. "Here is what we do first. We revoke the authorization in writing. We notify the bank. We notify the hospital. We preserve evidence. Then we prepare a formal demand for repayment once we confirm the total amount." "Can I stop her from accessing anything else?" I asked. "Yes." The word was simple. It steadied me. "We can also review your will, your medical directive, and any beneficiary forms. If Claire has been near one document, I want to know whether she has been near others." Daniel's head lifted sharply. "Beneficiary forms?" Howard did not soften the answer. "Yes." For the first time, Daniel looked truly afraid. Not angry, not defensive, afraid of how much he did not know. I understood that fear. I had been living inside it since morning. Carol stepped forward with a hospital form. "Mrs. Ellis, this updates your approved contacts for medical and billing information. As you requested, Daniel is listed. Claire is removed." She handed me the pen. This time, I read every line, every word. No one hurried me. No one said, "Just sign here." No one smiled over my shoulder. The document was only one page, but I took my time. Then I signed. My signature still looked shaky, but this time, it belonged to me. Claire came back at 4:18 p.m. I remember the time because I was watching the clock when the elevator doors opened somewhere down the hall. By then, Howard had already sent the first notice to the bank. Carol had updated my hospital records. Daniel was sitting near the window, silent, with both hands clasped between his knees. He had not called Claire back. Neither had I. That was probably why she came. The knock on my door was light, almost cheerful. Before anyone answered, Claire stepped in carrying a bouquet of white lilies wrapped in pale green paper. "Mom," she said, her voice soft and breathless. "Oh, thank God. I was so worried." She crossed the room quickly, but not too quickly. Claire always knew how to perform concern at the right speed. She wore cream-colored pants, a loose sweater, and flat sandals. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, and her makeup was softer than usual, almost tired-looking, but not tired enough. Her skin had that warm gold tint people get from lying beside a pool. Her nails were freshly polished in a pale pink shine. Around her wrist was the delicate gold bracelet from the Miami photo, the one I had zoomed in on until my eyes hurt. She placed the flowers on the rolling tray beside my bed and bent down as if she meant to hug me. I did not move toward her. That stopped her for half a second. Only half. Then she recovered and kissed the air near my cheek. "I've been calling," she said. "Did you not see your phone?" I saw it. Her smile held, but something behind her eyes tightened. Daniel stood up. Claire turned toward him with relief, so practiced it almost looked real. "Danny, there you are. I was getting scared. Your mother's card suddenly stopped working, and I thought maybe the bank froze it because of the hospital." Daniel did not answer. That was the first crack. Claire looked from him to me, then to Howard, who sat quietly in the corner with his leather folder on his lap. She noticed Carol near the foot of the bed, too. Her fingers tightened around the flower wrapping. "I'm sorry," she said, forcing a small laugh. "I didn't realize we were having a meeting." Howard stood. "Claire Ellis?" "Yes." Her chin lifted slightly. "And you are?" "Howard Klein. I'm Margaret's attorney." The word attorney changed the room. It did not get louder. No one raised a voice. But I saw Claire's shoulders go still under her sweater. "Attorney?" she repeated. "Mom, what's going on?" I looked at her bracelet, then at the flowers. Lilies. White, expensive, fragrant enough to cover the antiseptic smell for a moment. I had never liked lilies in a hospital room. They smelled too much like funerals. "Was Miami warm this time of year?" I asked. Claire blinked. Daniel turned his head toward her. For one full second, she forgot to breathe. Then she laughed, a little too quickly. "Miami?" "Yes," I said. "Miami. I don't know what you mean. You posted photographs." Her lips parted, then closed. "Oh." She waved one hand as if brushing away dust. "That." "Mom, those were old pictures. I posted them because my friend was reminiscing about a trip we took forever ago." Daniel spoke for the first time. "Claire." She looked at him. "What?" "Don't." Just one word. But it landed harder than if he had shouted. Claire's face changed again. Soft wife disappeared. Injured wife arrived. "Daniel, why are you looking at me like that?" He held up my phone. On the screen was the photo of her in the boutique, holding the designer handbag. The timestamp sat clearly beneath it. "This was posted this morning." Claire's eyes flicked to the phone, then to me. I could almost see her deciding which mask to wear next. Confusion. Offense. Tears. Anger. She chose offense first. "I can't believe you're all spying on me while I'm trying to help this family." Howard's voice was calm. "Mrs. Ellis, no one is spying. Your public posts were saved after Margaret's hospital payment was declined." Claire turned to me sharply. "The payment was declined?" "The performance was good. Not perfect. Good." Her surprise arrived a little late. "Yes," I said. "The card you had for hospital billing." She pressed a hand to her chest. "Mom, I told you the bank might flag things. I was handling it." "From Miami?" Her eyes hardened for half a second. Then tears appeared. I had to admire the speed. "I needed 2 days," she whispered. "Do you have any idea what it's been like? Driving you to appointments, dealing with doctors, paperwork, Daniel's stress, everything?" I was overwhelmed. Daniel stared at her. "You told me it was a wellness retreat in Sedona." Claire looked at him, wounded. "Because I knew you'd judge me." "With him?" Daniel asked. There it was. The man in the photo entered the room without being present. Claire's face went pale. "Who?" she said. I reached for my phone. My hand moved slowly, but no one hurried me. I opened the folder. Claire. The name looked almost polite. I tapped the balcony photo and turned the screen toward her. The man's hand rested at her waist, her head tilted toward him. Not like a friend, not like a cousin, not like someone from a group retreat, like a woman who had forgotten her husband existed. Claire stared at it. Then she laughed again, smaller this time. That's Ryan. He's a client. We ran into each other. At a Miami resort? Daniel asked. She swallowed. It looks bad, but it's not what you think. I almost smiled. People only say that when it is exactly what you think. Howard stepped forward and placed a printed copy of the bank statement on the tray beside the flowers. Perhaps you can also explain these charges. Claire looked down. First-class upgrade. Miami Beach Grand Palms Resort. Luna Mare Boutique. Azure Dining Room. Serenity Spa Miami. Couples Package. ATM withdrawal. The flowers rustled in her hand as she gripped them tighter. Those were for Margaret, she said. No one spoke. Even the monitor seemed quieter. For me? I asked. Her eyes snapped to mine. Yes, the hotel was connected to a medical recovery consultant. I was researching options for your aftercare. It was such a ridiculous lie that Daniel actually stepped back. Claire, he said, almost pleading, stop. But she did not stop. People like Claire rarely stop when the first lie fails. They build another one on top of it, then another, until the room is so full of nonsense that decent people get tired. I bought the bag because there were documents inside, she continued. I needed something professional for your paperwork. The spa was for two, I said. She froze. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had stood in my kitchen and told me Thomas would want me taken care of. The woman who kissed my cheek before surgery. The woman who called me mom while memorizing the path to my pension. Claire, I said softly, how much of my money is left? Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. That silence told Daniel more than any confession could. He sat down like his legs had given way. I did not look at him yet. If I did, I might become his mother again too quickly. I might soften. I might comfort him, instead of finishing what needed to be said. Claire tried tears again. They spilled neatly down her cheeks. I made a mistake, she whispered. I was under pressure. I didn't mean for it to get this far. This far? I asked. My voice was still quiet. That seemed to bother her more than anger would have. You used my hospital money, I said. You used my pension. You used my signature. You used my son's trust. And then you stood in this room with flowers, hoping I would be too weak to ask questions. The lilies sat between us, white and useless. Claire looked at Daniel. Please, she said. Tell her I'm not a bad person. Daniel did not answer. His silence was the second crack. This one went deeper. Howard picked up the authorization document. Margaret has revoked this access, he said. The bank has been notified. The hospital has removed you from her records. From this point forward, you are not authorized to discuss her billing, medical care, or finances. Claire stared at him, then at me. For the first time since she entered the room, her face showed something real. Not guilt. Fear. You can't do that, she said. I folded my hands on the blanket. I already did. Her eyes moved around the room, searching for someone easier than me. Daniel looked away. Carol stood steady. Howard waited. There was nowhere for Claire's performance to land, so it fell. For a few seconds, she was just a woman in a hospital room, wearing a bracelet bought with money that should have paid for medicine. I looked at that bracelet one last time. Then I looked at her face. You didn't come here because you were worried about me, I said. You came because the card stopped working. Claire flinched. The truth had finally touched her. And I understood then why silence had been the right choice all morning. If I had screamed, she would have called me hysterical. If I had cried, she would have called me confused. But I had stayed quiet. I had saved the pictures. I had called the bank. I had called Howard. And now there was nothing left for her to twist, only the room, the proof, and my name, finally back in my own hands. Claire stood there for a moment, looking at all of us as if the room had betrayed her. Not me, not Daniel, not the bank statement, the room. That was how people like Claire survived. They treated consequences like an ambush. They acted shocked when the truth finally arrived wearing shoes. Howard placed his leather folder on the rolling tray beside my bed. The lilies Claire had brought were still there, their white petals brushing against the printed bank statement. He moved the flowers aside, not roughly, just enough to make space for the truth. Margaret, he said, with your permission, I'd like to review the documents in front of everyone. You have my permission. Claire's head snapped toward me. Mom, this is humiliating. I looked at her. The word almost interested me. Humiliating. My payment being declined while I sat in a hospital gown was not humiliating to her. My pension being drained was not humiliating. My bank card lying on a hotel nightstand in Miami was not humiliating. But being seen clearly was. I agree, I said quietly. It is. She looked relieved for half a second, as if she thought I meant her. Then I added, "Or you?" Daniel lowered his head. Howard began. First, the authorization document. He held up the page Claire had brought me before surgery. My signature sat at the bottom, small and shaky. Claire folded her arms. She signed it willingly. Howard nodded once. She signed a document while preparing for a medical procedure, under the explanation that it was for hospital billing. That's what it was for. No, Howard said. That is what you told her it was for. Claire's lips pressed together. Howard turned the page toward Daniel. This language allowed access to account information, communication with financial institutions, confirmation of funds, and payment initiation related to care and recovery. Daniel stared at the paper. Is that normal? He asked. For limited hospital billing. No, Howard said. It is broader than necessary. Claire stepped forward. I didn't write the form. The hospital gave it to us. Carol, who had been quiet near the foot of the bed, spoke for the first time. This is not a standard hospital billing form. Claire turned to her. You don't know that. Carol's voice stayed even. I work here, Mrs. Ellis. I do. That stopped her. Only for a second. Then Claire reached for anger. Oh, so now everyone's against me? I'm the villain because I tried to help an old woman who couldn't handle her own paperwork? The room went still. Old woman. There it was. Not Mom. Not Margaret. Not family. Old woman. Daniel looked up slowly. I felt those words land, but they did not cut as deeply as she probably hoped. Maybe because I had already seen the photos. Maybe because once someone steals from you, insults become almost ordinary. Howard glanced at me, as if checking whether I wanted to respond. I did not. Some words condemn themselves better than we ever could. Howard placed the next page on the tray. Second, the transaction history. He read each charge aloud. Not dramatically, not like an accusation, like a grocery list. Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. First-class upgrade. Miami Beach Grand Palms Resort. Luna Mare Boutique. Azure Dining Room. Serenity Spa Miami. ATM withdrawal. Additional hotel bar charges after midnight. Claire's face changed with each line. Not guilt. Calculation. She was measuring which charge could still be explained and which one would sink her. The trip was for stress, she said. I told you that. Howard looked at Daniel. Did you know your wife was in Miami? Daniel's throat moved. No. Where did you believe she was? A retreat. In Arizona. Claire turned to him. Because I knew you wouldn't understand. Daniel's voice was low. You were with another man. He is not the issue here. That sentence did more damage than she knew. Daniel stared at her. Not the issue? Claire realized too late what she had said. I mean, this is about your mother turning everyone against me. I almost smiled. There I was, lying in a hospital bed with tape on my hand and stitches beneath my gown, apparently powerful enough to turn an entire room against an innocent woman. Howard picked up my phone. With Margaret's consent, I'm going to show the saved screenshots. I nodded. He turned the screen toward Daniel first. Claire by the pool, Claire at dinner, Claire in the boutique, Claire on the balcony, Claire in the mirror with Ryan behind her. Claire's caption, finally living the life I deserve. Daniel read it again. This time, something in his face closed completely. Is that what you think? He asked her. Claire's eyes filled. Daniel, please. Is my mother's pension the life you deserve? She said nothing. Howard swiped to the next image. The bank card on the hotel nightstand. My card. Even Claire looked at it for longer than she meant to. Daniel stood up. That's Mom's card. Claire whispered. I can explain. No, Daniel said. You keep saying that, but you're not explaining. You're just changing the story every time the last one stops working. His voice broke slightly on the final words. I looked down at my hands. I did not enjoy watching my son hurt. No mother does. Even when the pain is necessary, it still feels like handing your child a knife and telling him he must cut himself free. Claire reached for him. He stepped back. That was the third crack, the one she could hear. Her face shifted again, and this time the tears looked less polished. Daniel, I made one mistake. Howard corrected her gently. Several transactions, several lies, one unauthorized use of funds, and a questionable authorization document. She glared at him. You're twisting this. No, he said. I'm organizing it. That sentence settled over the room. Organizing it. That was exactly what had saved me. Not rage, not revenge. Organization. Screenshots in a folder, statements in an email, a frozen card, a revoked authorization, a hospital record corrected line by line. Claire had counted on confusion. I had given her documentation. Carol stepped forward with another form. Mrs. Ellis, this confirms Claire has been removed from your approved contact list for medical and billing information. No staff member should discuss your care or account with her going forward. Claire laughed bitterly. So I'm just cut off now? I looked at her. You cut yourself off when you used my recovery money for a hotel room. She flinched again. Not much. Enough. Daniel sat down heavily and covered his mouth with one hand. His wedding ring caught the hospital light. For the first time all day, I wondered whether Claire had used his money too. His credit. His trust. His signature, somewhere he had not looked closely enough. Howard must have been thinking the same thing, because he turned to Daniel. You should review your accounts as well. Daniel nodded without looking at Claire. She noticed. Fear returned to her face. Not because she had hurt him, because another door might close. Danny, she said softly, please, don't do this here. He looked at her then. Where would you like me to do it, Claire? At the resort? The room fell silent. That was not my son's usual tone. Daniel avoided sharpness. He smoothed things over. He apologized even when he had done nothing wrong. But betrayal changes the sound of a person. Claire's mouth trembled. I was lonely, she whispered. Daniel stared at her. I felt those words move through the room like smoke. Lonely. She had chosen a word that might have worked on him another day. A word that asked for sympathy without giving accountability. A word that turned betrayal into sadness and theft into need. But I knew loneliness. I knew the sound of a house after a husband dies. I knew coffee for one, dinners reheated in silence, birthdays that arrived too quietly, and waking from dreams where Thomas was still breathing beside me. Loneliness did not make me steal. It did not make me lie to my son. It did not put my bank card on a hotel nightstand next to another man's wallet. I spoke before Daniel could. Loneliness is not permission, Claire. She looked at me. For once, she had no immediate answer. Howard closed the folder. Margaret has grounds to demand repayment. Depending on what the bank determines, there may be further steps. For now, I advise you not to contact her about this matter directly. Claire's face hardened. So that's it? You're going to ruin my life over money? There it was again. Over money. As if money were separate from medicine. Separate from safety. Separate from years of work and sacrifice. Separate from the dignity of not begging anyone to pay a hospital bill. I looked at the lilies, then at the statement, then at Claire. No, I said. I'm going to protect my life because you treated it like spending money. She stared at me. The tears had stopped. Maybe she finally understood that crying would not open the door this time. Daniel moved toward the window and looked out over the hospital parking lot. The sun was lower now, turning the cars below into bright pieces of metal. For a long time, no one spoke. Then he said, without turning around, Claire, leave. Her eyes widened. Daniel, leave. One word. Flat. Final. Claire looked at Howard, then Carol, then me. The flowers she had brought remained on the tray. She did not take them. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she knew they had failed. At the door, she turned back one last time. You'll regret this, she said. I met her eyes. For the first time, I saw the girl behind the performance. Not young, not innocent, just empty in a way I had mistaken for polish. No, I said. I regret trusting you. This is what comes after. She left. The door closed softly behind her. No slam, no dramatic exit, just a click. I listened to her footsteps fade down the hall. Then I reached for the lilies, lifted them from the tray, and handed them to Daniel. Please ask the nurse to take these away, I said. He looked at the flowers, then at me. His eyes were red. I'm sorry, Mom. I leaned back against the pillows. I was tired in a way sleep could not fix. I know. I said, and I did know. But knowing was not the same as healing, not yet. Part 9. I left the hospital with my name. Back Claire left the hospital room with nothing but her purse and the sound of her own footsteps. The lilies stayed behind. For a long moment, no one moved. Daniel stood beside the door, holding the flowers like he did not know what they were anymore. Howard quietly gathered the bank statements. Carol checked the updated hospital form one more time, and I lay there listening to the heart monitor. Beep, 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 steady, mine. That sound had frightened me after surgery. It had made me feel weak, dependent, watched over by machines and strangers. But now, in the silence Claire left behind, it sounded different. It sounded like proof. I was still here. By sunset, Howard had sent written notice revoking Claire's authorization. Valley Trust Bank confirmed my card was frozen. The dispute had been opened, and no further charges would be approved. Carol made sure the hospital billing office had Daniel's number and mine only. Claire's name was removed from every contact sheet, every permission form, every place she had quietly inserted herself. I signed each new paper slowly, line by line. No one rushed me. Daniel watched from the chair beside my bed. Each time I reached the bottom of a page, Howard explained it again. Not because I could not understand, because this time, understanding mattered. When I signed the last form, my hand trembled. But the signature was mine, not borrowed, not guided, not used, mine. Daniel drove home that evening to check the house and review his own accounts. Before he left, he stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed, looking older than he had that morning. "Mom," he said, "I should have seen it." I looked at my son. The anger in me was real, but so was the love. That is the hardest part about family betrayal. Pain does not erase love. It only teaches it where to stand. "Yes," I said softly. "You should have." His eyes filled. I did not reach out immediately. I let the words sit there, honest and heavy. Then I added, "But seeing it now has to mean something." He nodded. "It will." I wanted to believe him. I did not promise that I did. 3 days later, I was discharged. The nurse wheeled me through the hospital lobby just after 10 in the morning. Phoenix sunlight poured through the glass doors, bright enough to make me squint. Daniel waited by the curb with my old blue cardigan folded over his arm. Claire was not there. Her absence did not feel empty. It felt clean. In the weeks that followed, Howard helped recover part of the money quickly through the bank dispute. The rest became a formal demand for repayment. Daniel moved out of the house he shared with Claire while he sorted through his marriage, his accounts, and the pieces of trust she had broken. He called me every evening. At first, the calls were stiff. "Did you take your medication? Did the home aide come? Do you need groceries?" Practical questions. Safe questions. Then, little by little, they became more honest. "I'm sorry I let her speak for you. I'm sorry I thought being busy was an excuse. I'm sorry Dad wasn't here, and I didn't step up." I did not absolve him with one gentle sentence, the way mothers are expected to do. Forgiveness is not a blanket you throw over broken glass. It is a floor you rebuild carefully, one board at a time. 3 months after Claire walked out of that hospital room, I stood in my backyard with a cane in one hand and a packet of marigold seeds in the other. Thomas had loved marigolds. He said they were stubborn little flowers, too bright for their own good. They bloomed in heat that made everything else give up. Daniel knelt beside the flower bed, turning the dry Arizona soil with a small shovel. "You sure you want them here?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Your father always liked this corner." He smiled faintly. For a while, we worked in silence. Not the cold silence Claire had created. A different kind. The kind that lets two people breathe near each other without pretending everything is fixed. My medical bills were being paid. My accounts were secure. My will, my beneficiary forms, and my medical directive had all been reviewed. Claire could not access a dollar, a document, or a decision connected to my life. But the real victory was quieter than that. It was opening my purse and seeing my own bank card inside. It was answering my own phone. It was telling the home aide, "I'll decide that after lunch." It was realizing that needing help did not mean surrendering myself. One afternoon, an envelope arrived from Howard with copies of the final updated papers. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Claire had once smiled and pointed at signature lines, and read every page. Thomas's photograph sat on the shelf across from me. I looked at it and laughed softly. "You were right," I whispered. I should have checked the lock. Outside, Daniel was watering the marigolds. The sun caught the spray from the hose, turning it silver for a moment, before it fell into the soil. I thought about that morning in the hospital, the declined payment, Claire's champagne smile, the flowers she left behind, the way my own name had looked at the bottom of a form I barely understood. Then I thought about the last paper I signed. Clear eyes, steady hand, my choice. Claire had thought my hospital bed made me powerless. She was wrong. A woman my age has survived grief, marriage, loneliness, motherhood, and betrayal. We may speak softly. We may take our time standing up. But when we finally do, even from a hospital bed, the whole room feels it. And this time, when I walked forward, I did not leave with revenge. I left with something better. I left with my name back.